That's something that Drupal helps us with. The other thing that helps with management. For those who know me, I'm not the strongest speller in the world. I never did well in grammar. And so I love the fact that I can write a blog post. I got lots to say. But I love that I can write a blog post and then I can send it to somebody else to check it before it goes live. In fact, there's some very sophisticated workflow modules in Drupal. And so you can get the team working on your posts through some very sophisticated management. Functionality, there's over 6,000 modules. Some of them have some really cool functionality, some really must-have things. And I will say, this is one of the areas that I eventually had to love the elegance of Drupal not being truly object-oriented. It's somewhat, some of the patterns are object-oriented, that's a whole nother talk for another time. But one of the things that's really interesting is that object-oriented programming is not accessible. It takes a while to learn. It takes a while to learn the patterns. What I love is I love the young guys. They're going out and creating the Facebook integration modules, the Twitter modules. I love the fact that Google came out with a list of fonts that people get integrated in their website instead of having just a few web-safe fonts. And the next day, someone jumped on that and created a module. And a lot of times, it's the younger guys. Us old guys, we care about data structures, and we care about boring stuff. Where you got the young people that now you have this functional programming that's accessible to them, and they can learn it very quickly. Human. Drupal's tagline is community plumbing. One of the things that absolutely fascinates me about Drupal is that all these CMSs are trying to get up to speed with Web 2.0. Drupal is almost doing it the other way around. They were Web 2.0 when it wasn't cool, and they're trying to figure out Web 1.0, they're trying to figure out the basics, which they do pretty well. But it's a community platform that we can build regular websites with, or we can build big communities. We can connect people together. What is brand? I say the word brand, what does that mean to you? Anyone? Come on, Elizabeth.
You're opinionated. It's really the messaging of what people think about your product or service. It's all the conversations and what everything comes to mind, whether it's the Santa Claus and Coke and polar bears, or the actual fizz, or the way the can looks.
Yeah, and a word that comes to my mind is that it's the experience you have with the product. It's, you know, they're not selling that Coke is a sugary solution with these flavors and this fizz. They're selling, you have fun. People have a great time when there's Coke around.
Right. And you said two important things. It's what people think. It's not a logo. It's not a tagline telling people what to think. It's what they actually think. So ultimately what we're trying to do is where leaders have figured out, not in a malicious way necessarily, but how to get into people's heads. So how do you get into people's heads? Well, anyone who comes to a website, anyone who comes to any brand impression you have, you've got in their heads. Suddenly all your text and your imagery, they're all sitting in working memory. Pretty much sitting in the frontal lobe, sort of the blue part over here. And then about 18 seconds after they leave their website, they've forgotten about you, because it only ever got to working memory. Really what we needed to go is into permanent memory. And I think I keep hitting the on-off button on this. We need to go into permanent memory, but there's this gatekeeper called the hippocampus, which unfortunately you can't really see, but it's around there. It looks like a horseshoe tail. And the hippocampus basically says, I am only allowing really important things to get into the cerebral cortex, which is where the permanent memory is. And there's two ways it basically gets there. Meaningful association or rehearsal. And we're going to come back a little bit to how that works. I love quadrants. I think that's like I feel like a consultant whenever there's a quadrant up there. So every time someone comes to your website, you are making an impression. The question is, what kind of impression are you making? Positive or negative, short-term or long-term? Obviously what we're looking for is a positive, lasting impression. Positive short-term impression is not bad. In the advertising world, you need to repeat and hit people several times. So maybe it's just the start. Maybe they come back. Maybe they don't. If you're going to make a negative impression, you hope it's short-term. And of course, the worst is if it's long-term. But how do we actually go about doing that? Well, long-term versus short-term is moving from passive to active. Passive, someone comes to your website, they might have a usual experience. There's nothing different here. They're just reading some copy and they might leave. Active is, ooh, here's a blog post. Maybe I can interact with that blog post. Maybe, you know what, I have an opinion about that. I'm gonna put a comment, or I'm going to rate it. Or maybe here's a white paper I can download. Moving people from just passively looking at your website to active is how we get things past the hippocampus into long-term memory. The other thing we want to do is we want to have a positive experience. What's interesting is in this room, how many designers do we have in the room? Ooh, only a few. We only got a few more. All right, we got a lone designer. So we've got, there are probably how many developers? And I forget which side of the brain is which, but some of you in general are going to be on one side or the other. One of the keys to creating a great positive experience is that humans have both a rational side and an emotional side. Generally, designers can appeal to the emotional side. Programmers tend to appeal to the rational side. And if we can appeal to both, then that can go a long ways into making a positive impression. Obviously, there's lots of other things that are a part of that. How do we use Drupal to make a good impression? Aesthetics. Keep it clean. This actually has seemed to have gotten a lot better. This is something I've been saying for a while, and it seems to have gotten a lot better under design, particularly in a CMS. In the old days, you could lay out everything in a static website, but now people can put in all kinds of content. The simpler you keep it, the better. There's a great book called Emotional Branding that talks about that when you're designing, you want to be connecting at an emotional level. So for example, don't design a site in gray. For people in Minnesota in the middle of winter, they hate gray. And it's just things like color palettes and fonts and all those kinds of things. Usability. Don't make me think. Anybody usability? I know we got one back there. Usability? Cliff?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So you've probably read Don't Make Me Think, Steve Krug. Yep. Basically, probably usability is the thankless science. Basically, if you're doing a good job, no one knows, no one notices.
Rocket Surgery Made Easy too.
Pardon?
Have you read Rocket Surgery Made Easy?
I have not.
That is his next, well, maybe not his next book, but another book he has published. And it's about doing usability testing in very simple ways, very quickly, ways that you don't have to be an expert usability tester to get good results.
And I think actually, isn't there a session that's going to be on that later on?
Yes.
Someone was going to do something on like simple ways of doing usability testing, which is fantastic. Content, transform corporate communications into genuine conversations. If you ever work with big companies, boy, they sure like to polish up those messages. Make them sound human. Kano analysis for functionality. Basically, a researcher, don't remember his full name, but Kano, was concerned about what are products that people love. And he basically said there's 3 types of features that products have. There are those must-haves, the things that a product has to have or people won't like it. There are the linears or the performance. The more there are of it, the better. So, for example, your website being faster. The faster it is, the better. The thirds are the delighters. These are things that people weren't expecting, but when they see it, it's kind of that extra oomph. So every time you build a product, and we actually build in sprints, and so we say in every sprint or in every release, we've got to have the must-haves. We want to have as much linears as possible. But we also want to put in a few delighters. And it's kind of an really interesting research, I think it was done in the 80s, about Kano analysis. And then human. Look human, sound human, be human. And then Drupal's excellent at connecting peers. In fact, actually, I have to give a shout out to one of my new favorite Drupal, it's not a module, thing, is Drupal Commons. It's an incredible way of connecting peers. Companies should go out and get it and figure out how to connect with their audiences better. Yes?
A name to look for today about delight, Giles Colborn, C-O-L-B-O-R-N-E. He's doing a lot on that today.
Giles Colborn. Okay, thanks. Conversion. Basically, when people come to your website, they either have an active need or a latent need. And so if people have a latent need, first thing you want to do, and everyone's conversion is different for every company. Probably the strongest version is sold. And sold could be that you're running e-commerce and someone actually bought something. Sold could be that they're ready to run away and join your whatever, your cause. So sold can be all kinds of, but basically hook, line, and sinker, they're committed. And there's all kinds of other steps. So you've got leads, someone's shows an initial interest in something. Sales step could be that someone's coming back and getting a piece of information that furthers them closer to getting sold. Basically, in latent needs, it's great when people have the intent to come back in the future, or they give you permission to contact them. Drupal's got all kinds of ways of helping this work. Interaction. We've got 6,000 modules. There's a lot of interaction in there. Contact submissions. A lot of different ways of doing it. Web form. Great module. Great simple module for gathering contact information from people. Email services integration. If you're going to be serious about this, go get something like WebChimp, Constant Contact, iContact. There's integration modules, so when people submit, they're now a part of your newsletter, or whatever you're going to be sending out. CRM integration. You can integrate, and so CRMs really managing customers and leads really could be done in Drupal, but for the most part, you probably want to be in a full dedicated CRM. Drupal integrates with a lot of CRMs. If you're a nonprofit, Civi CRM is a lot of fun and a lot of power. You've got Sugar, which is a free open source. You've got Salesforce.com, some other great integration. Sales steps. A couple tactics I love is one, go to a webinar, have an event. You can let people register right on your site. We all did it. And they don't have to necessarily pay. You can have the non-paid version and have people sign up for your event. The other thing is you can implement a register or submit, so have some piece of content, a white paper, maybe a video screencast, and that people need to maybe register to get to that piece of content. And sold. Obviously you've got UberCart that we can sell all kinds of stuff. There's some other solutions out there for doing some things. And then registration, that's a great way to sell people to be a part of your community, about your website. And it's just simple part of core. It's something that often gets forgotten. But if you can give even if you don't really have a full-blown community, and you can give people some reason to join your website, could be just to post comments. Well, now you've got permission, depending on how you do it, you should have permission to communicate, and most likely you've got that intent for them to come back in the future. He was the biggest database wins, getting into retention. This is fairly obvious. What is not always obvious, though, is that obviously you want to have lots of records. Lots of people, but you also want to have lots of breadth. What do we know about these people? That's where true CRM, like Civi CRM, comes into place. It'll do all kinds of things that tell you who their brother and sister, and all these different people, all these different types of connections. And so Drupal doesn't specifically help you with that database.